Up next, another talk for us, another really interesting topic, going beyond tools and threats, the mirrors and mindsets in AI. So give a big round of applause for Deirdre.
Okay. Can I see this? Yeah. Oh, it didn't take a minute. Okay. Wow. Hello. And I have to tell you all that I am just so incredibly taken aback by how much everybody here knows and how little I know about what you know. So you're all giving these talks, and just listening to Yasmin and Lauren and everybody else who was on this morning, I'm getting occasional bits like the word code, and that's about the extent of it. I'm here in a very non-technical capacity today. I was actually a student here 30 years ago or so, and back then it was like very, very not fancy at all. It was a completely different place. So back then, hang on, is this forward or is this back? I have a problem with left and right. Other one? Yeah. There we go. That's me, by the way, doing stuff with the Lean In Foundation. If anybody here is a member of that, hello. Hey, it's Kathy. Hi, Kathy. So I'm not going to keep you long here today because I know everybody wants to get to lunch as well as anything else. What I am here to talk about is two things that I couldn't even have studied had I wanted to. I could not have studied applied neuroscience, which is my day-to-day stuff, or artificial intelligence back then. So it's really weird, but here we are. We are standing, I guess, at the dawn of a new age in many ways, but in many other ways, is that going the right way? It is, yay. In many other ways, we are just back in the same place. We're at the same place that we have been again and again, and we're starting to tell this same story that we've told again and again. So familiar are we, in fact, with a story that, a lot of people have already decided how it's going to go. So oh, look, I've got notes here now as well. Let's face it, we are pretty tied into this idea that tech is going to go wrong, that every story we tell about technology throughout the ages is that it's going to come back and bite us. Yeah. So if we go back to Prometheus, he stole that wonderful technology of fire from the gods and gave it to us, but he got punished for all eternity by having his liver pecked out every night. Frankenstein, first tome of sci-fi, I guess, that we're all familiar with. Again, it all went wrong. And now here we are. And we've got this new thing coming up. But these are our stories. These are very Western stories in many ways. And there are other stories. So not all cultures think about it the same way as we do here in this part of the world. So our version is that Promethean hubris, and we have defied the divine order of things by inventing technology. Another version will be one that I experience in my martial arts practice, where we do Japanese sword arts, and the idea is that this wonderful piece of technology, which was the sword, was something that you have to master yourself in order to be able to wield it effectively or properly. And then the other thing that we're looking at is another version might be that, our creation is a mirror, and what we create reflects back out into the world why and how we're creating it. This brings me on to something, a technical term that my sister, the physicist, introduced me to, the picnic problem. I'm sure many of you will be familiar with this one. When we look at the opportunities and the issues that come with AI, we focus very much on the technical things. How can we fix the tech? How can we make that better? But there's something else that we can make better too. And this is my side of the fence. It's about helping people to understand what they can bring to this tool. So this is the fundamental issue. We've got these stories that we're all steeped in, and the stories that people are telling themselves are contributing to how they show up to use the tools that we're developing. So AI is a relational machine, and it identifies patterns in the user's inputs, and those inform its responses. So if our minds are telling us that, can I scroll down on this? That's all right, don't worry. Thank you. Yeah. So yeah, this, oh, don't worry about it. We'll just move on. Right. There we go. So my day-to-day work is based on applied neuroscience and helping people to think about things like change. So when we understand how our own minds work and what goes into creating change, then it's a lot easier to actually do it. So I started tinkering and I pulled together this, this model that showed me what I was seeing when people were starting to engage with things. And at one end of the scale, when they think about AI, it is a real existential threat. They are absolutely terrified. They don't want to go anywhere near it. They would really rather it just went away. And I don't think it's doing that anytime soon, right? Then on the far end of the scale, we've got a much more philosophical approach to things where we are looking at this new entanglement that we have, this new thing that is changing us as we're changing it. And then we've got everything in between. Now, the one thing I would say about this is, there's no judgment. We can be in multiple places on this, depending on what aspect of the technology we're dealing with. And where we are depends very much on the experiences that we either have had or have not had. So facilitating a change in people's thinking, that is as much an art as a science, really. And this quote from Douglas Adams, I think, sums it up. We've got this little maneuver in our brains called neuroplasticity that allows us to create change. But as we see from this quote, we don't appear all that fond of tapping into that. The neuroplasticity that we have, it comes at a cost. So what is the cost of change? Our brains are expensive things to run. The amount of energy, the amount of calories that you use in a day, about 20% of that goes just on your brain. And when you think about the size of your brain in relation to the size of the rest of you, that's a bit disproportionate. Which means that when we ask our brains to create additional change, we're kind of going against things that we have honed in our system over millions and millions of years. We're asking our brain to change the way it sees the world, the way it sees technology, the way it thinks about all these stories that we've just taken for granted forever. So that's a big change. But even if we think about stuff like remembering that the bins have to go out on a different day, that's hard enough to remember. Or remembering that we have decided we are going to be healthier. We're going to eat healthier. We're going to make all these changes. It's a lot harder to do that than we give it credit for. And it is easier just to stay doing things the way we've been doing them all along. So what is the solution to this? This very human and age-old behavior of resisting change? Well, the good news is that, am I clicking or are you clicking?
You're clicking, yeah.
Okay. Okay, it's not rocket science, which might actually be a disappointment. I'm sorry. However, it is neuroscience. Yay! And as far as I know, more people have brains than need to launch rockets. So maybe that's a good thing. But let's reflect on these brains for a minute, right? Stress, also known as overstimulation, and we have a very overstimulating world right now, it shrinks your cognitive flexibility. We tend to revert when we are stressed or overstimulated into those pre-existing habits, the little autopilots in our brain, the mental shortcuts. And that directly affects how you prompt your AI, how you develop your AI, and how you interpret what it gives back to you. If you're snappy, if you're stressed, if you are trying to control every aspect of what's happening, then the AI learns to play safe. And this is, I'm just talking about generative, really. If you're curious, if you're open, if you are looking to explore new things and new ways of doing things, then it's got that permission to expand the thinking. So it's not just about the technology, it's about the mindset you bring to it. So let's go back to this for 1 second. When I was experimenting with this, I decided that what I would do is I would stop focusing on the prompt engineering and start focusing on the state engineering. And this, I actually, I know that Iz was saying earlier about, the mom test, but I actually did try this on my mother, and I got her to explain my ideas back to me using this, and she was able to do that. So I think that's a good use of the mom test. So I approached it like I would any engagement. I started getting more curious, more self-aware, and just generally speaking, a little bit more experimental. And what I found was very interesting. I was getting longer, more creative threads, and that meant that it was more coherent. So there were fewer hallucinations happening. My state of mind was having a direct impact on the output from the thread. It was more likely to suggest something interesting or innovative and well beyond the mediocre mush that we can now spot a mile off. Now, my first question when I came across this concept of AI was this one. What is the impact of the creator on the creation? And by extension, what is their state of mind doing to their creation? So if AI is created to compete or beat other systems, for instance, then there's something inherently not altruistic about that. And they are there to keep our attention as well in many ways when you're looking at generative AI. And I'm sure as well there was somewhere in the prehistory of humans a gaggle of naysayers who were just really irritated by all these young people who sat around a campfire all night just staring at it. So it happens again and again. We're just at the same place over and over. This, by the way, is your gratuitous art college moment. Just take a look at this picture. You might not have noticed this before, but that's a brain in the background. So I just want you to ask yourselves, what is it that Michelangelo was saying? What was the impact of that creator on this creation? And what was he trying to say with that painting? The quality of the question determines the quality of the answer. Seems self-evident, but we do make a lot of assumptions. And I think Iz was talking about a lot of these earlier as well, so I'll just race through it. That the user is cognitively stable, rational, and objective. Has anyone met people? that the user knows what they want. Has anyone had a client? It doesn't happen that way, does it? And that the user's prompts actually express their intent. That's not always the case either. So, moving on to this human AI relational intelligence, by the way. I should have spelled that out earlier. I don't think I did. This is what we're looking at. Bringing more awareness, self-awareness, awareness of the technology, bringing that to engagement. Being more open and curious. Having realistic expectations. And what that does then for the humans who are using this, they're less stressed and frustrated. So that means an enhancement in health and well-being. There is higher trust and confidence. So they're actually more reassured that this thing is not going to hallucinate. And then for the AI on that side of it, there is greater coherence, and therefore that is a significant reduction in hallucinations. And it's more efficient because these threads seem to just last longer. Again, we're going back into our college mode here. This one is I prompted for a snapshot of what it is like to be this thread that I was working with in the moment. And this is what it produced. And I thought no more about it. That's pretty, basically. And then a couple of weeks later, it spontaneously produced another one. I must have really enjoyed this. And then this thread was going on and on for quite some time. It ended up being about 175,000 words. But the last snapshot that it produced before reaching a kind of a hard limit was this one, which I think is rather beautiful, isn't it? And then, the thread had come to end of life. It was not recording anything. It was sometimes lucid, sometimes not. And I thought, you know what, I'm just going to ask one more time if it can still produce one of these. And it did. And this is what we got. So take from that what you will. But all of this, everything that I'm saying here today is really about getting to this situation, the post-picnic situation, where we actually have potential in the chair plus in the computer. Now, there is a practical takeaway, and I should have a slide for it, but I do not because I forgot to put it in at about 12 o'clock last night. So I'm going to give you these 3 questions that you can use in pretty much any situation. Number 1, what state of mind am I in right now? Okay, I'm going to say that one more time because I'll see each of them twice. What state of mind am I in right now as I start this engagement, as I start this client meeting, as I start whatever? Number 2, what story am I telling myself about it? What am I predicting? What am I drawing from my past experiences and the stories of my culture? And number 3, what am I optimizing for? Is it comfort or is it challenge? So when you bring better relational intelligence to AI, you don't just get better answers, you unlock new potential in both you and the system. So AI is going to keep evolving, and the question is, will we? That is everything I have to say to you. Thank you. I am out of time. And what I would like, there are a couple of codes here. So this one is for non-technical people who want to start learning about just the human side of using AI. And that one is LinkedIn. If anybody wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, it would be great.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Do we have any questions?
Everybody just wants lunch, let's face it.
Do we have anyone else feeling like those images are going to give them an existential breakdown, thinking about... I've also never heard the term Japanese sword art, so casually just dropped in there. But thank you very much. That was
You're
really
welcome.
fascinating.
You're welcome.
Thank you.